To make your 3D art look 2D, you need Toon Shaders. In this tutorial, I'll cover how to make a basic Toon Shader, add outlines plus details using grease pencil, and finally, how to solve common issues in Blender 4.4. You're watching Vector Resight, let's get started. So we are in a default scene in Blender. Let's go to our render properties and make sure the render engine is set to Eevee. Let's go to color management, change the view transform to standard, and change the look to medium high contrast. Pull this tab up and change it from timeline to shader editor. Let's go into the rendered view tab so we can see the materials as well. To hide this panel, press N on the keyboard. Now the default cube has a basic material by default, so we are going to use it, but let's rename it to Toon Shader. And let's delete the principal BSDF node. So let's create our basic Toon Shader which only requires 3 nodes. Press Shift A and search for a diffuse BSDF. Similarly, search for a shader to RGB node and add a color ramp node. Connect the diffuse BSDF output to the shader input of the shader to RGB and connect its color output to the factor of color ramp. Connect the color to the surface of the material output and you will see something has changed. But to get the full effect of the Toon Shader, that is the crisp lines or the distinction between colors, we need to change it from linear to constant interpolation. Slide this slider or marker to change where the area or the highlight appears. Now we are still using the default light in the scene, but we are not going to use it for any toon shading. In most setups, you will almost always use only one light, that is the sunlight. So press X and delete to delete this, and I'll also hide the camera for now. So press Shift A, light, and add a sun lamp. Let's rotate it by R, X and 30 degrees. Now press on the cube, and if you change this slider, and you will see the material changes as well. So I'll add 2 more objects to see the effect more clearly. So press Shift A, Mesh and UV sphere, and second let's add a monkey. Right click shade smooth, right click shade smooth, and let's apply the same Toon Shader on these 2 as well. Now you'll notice the UV sphere looks quite good, but the monkey has some artifacts or problems like this. So let's select the monkey and add a subdivision surface modifier, and it should fix all of them, if not most of them. Next, let's change the background environment color. So if you go from the object to the world tab in the shader properties and change the background color, you'll notice that it also affects our lighting, but we don't want that. So let's press undo and let's duplicate this background shader. Let's disconnect the world output and start building our background shader. So press Shift A and add a mix shader. Connect the background node to the A and the new background node to the B input. Next, add a light path node and connect the camera ray to the factor. Connect this mix shaders output to the world surface output. Now if we change the lower color, it will only change the background color and it will not affect the color of the shading or our Toon Shader. So this is how we change the background color. So let's keep it something like this. Next, let's go back to our object and see how the sun lamp strength changes the objects as well. So now I'll select the sun lamp, go into its properties and change the strength to 3. Now this might look harsh, but it gives more control with the sliders. Earlier we had to push it all the way to this side, but now we get good shading around half of the way. Next, let's add colors to this Toon Shader. So adding colors is simple. You just select the pointer or marker and change the color from here. So let's select a light blue for this and let's select a dark blue for this one. And we have our basic Toon Shader ready. Now if you want a gradual change between these 2, so let's say you want another color between these 2, so you just click on plus here and it will add another marker and you can move it around, but place them between these 2 and make it a little lighter or a color between these 2. Now we have a nice transition between the light and the dark. and you can always adjust the position of the light from these sliders. So how this setup works is, the diffuse BSDF captures the light information, the shader to RGB turns it into color data, and the color ramp allows us to change that color data. Next, let's see how to create outlines using two different methods. So the first one is called the inverted hull method using a solidify modifier. But before that, we need an outline color, so let's create that. Go into these slots, material slots, click on plus and add a new material, and let's name it outline. Let's delete the principal BSDF node and add a emission node by pressing Shift A and searching for emission. Connect the emission output to the surface output and let's change the color to black. Now this emission shader allows the material to not be influenced by the light. So whatever the lighting in the scene is, this material will always be black or any color that you choose from here. So now let's move on to the solidify modifier. So select the cube, add modifier, generate and solidify modifier. In the normals, click on flip, and in the materials, turn on the material offset to 1. Now it will change the color to black of the full cube. So the material offset 1 means it is offsetting the main material by +1. But if you have a lot of materials, you don't want to find the material number and click through multiple times to see which number it is. So what you can do is click on the outline and move it onto the top, and then if you select the material offset to -1, it will always select the first material in the material slots. So no matter how many materials you add after this, it will always select the top material as the solidify outline material. So now let's go into the material properties and select the outline shader, and in the backface culling, click on camera. So now it hides all the faces that have normals inverted towards the camera. But we still don't see any outline, so for that we need to increase the thickness of the solidify modifier. Now you'll see that the thickness is increasing towards the inner side of the cube, but let's say we want the original boundary of the cube to stay and we want to make the outline on the outside. So let's just change the offset to +1 and it will do the opposite of what it was doing earlier. So let's adjust the thickness to something like this, let's say 0.2, but now you'll notice that the shader is gone. So it's only showing the dark color. So what's happening is the solidify modifier is actually covering all of the cube, but we are just not seeing the front faces due to the backface culling option. So what we need to do is we need to turn on the backface culling for shadow as well. So now our original shader is back again, and now we have an outline which changes according to the camera view. So let's apply the same to this and this. So instead of going through the whole solidify setup again, what you can do is select on this object, shift click to select this object, and go into this drop down and select copy to selected. Make sure to select the solidify object last. So similarly select this, shift select this, solidify arrow and copy to selected. But you'll notice that we did not get the black outline because this does not have any black outline slots. So just select the object, go into the slots, add materials, and from the drop down select the outline material. Also make sure to move it on the first slot. Similarly for this, let's add a new material slot, select the outline material and move it to the top slot. So now for different objects you might have to tweak the solidify to make it look good. So for different materials you'll need different settings of the solidify modifier. Similarly for this, you can change them independently. Next, let's say you have a lot of objects in a collection, but you don't want to go on applying a solidify to all of them. So what you can do is use the second method, which is using the grease pencil. So I'll just select all of these, press Shift D to duplicate and right click to reset location, M to move them in a new collection called GP, or let's say objects for outline, and create the collection. Now I'll just hide the original objects and keep this one, and let's remove the solidify outline from these. This also works if there is no outline material, so let's remove that as well. So now we have 3 objects with no outline materials and no solidify modifiers. So now that our setup is ready, let's see second outline method, which is using the grease pencil. So select this collection as the active by clicking this button, press Shift A, grease pencil and add a grease pencil blank. Next, let's go into the modifiers panel. While selecting the grease pencil object, click add modifier, generate and a line art modifier. Select the source type to collection. Unless you want to make it an outline for the whole scene, you can use the scene as well. So let's try scene first. A layer will be generated automatically, so you can select this layer, and a black material is generated automatically as well, so you can select this material. So this applies an outline to everything and you can control the line thickness from here. Now it looks weird when you see it like this, but from the camera view, which you can enter by pressing numpad 0, it will always look perfect because the grease pencil line art is always aligned to the camera object. Now to fix things like this, where the strokes are not consistent on the objects, let's select the grease pencil material again, select it from here or select it from here. Let's go into the properties, object properties, and in viewport display, click on in front. Now the grease pencil outline will be kept in front and it will be consistent throughout. Even if you rotate the objects, it will stay aligned to the camera even if it looks weird from the other angles. As long as you are in the camera, it looks good. Next, let's create a Toon Shader setup from a scene I did recently from the movie Kiki's Delivery Service. So let's get into it. So now that you know the basics, let's create materials for this flower pot. So I'll first go into the world properties or the world shader and change the background color to something like a blue. And now let's work on the objects. So switch back to object shader properties, select your object, click on plus new to create a material. It's always good to name your objects or materials. So I'll just name it Toon Pot or Vase. And let's delete the principled BSDF node. Let's press Shift A, add a diffuse BSDF node. And now if you click and drag from this BSDF node, it will show you the options to add things, and since I've been using this a lot, so it gives me the suggestion as shader to RGB node. Similarly, if you pull a noodle from here, it will give you suggestions and you can select or you can search for color ramp and it will add it automatically. Next, connect the color to the surface material output. Change linear interpolation to constant and change this slider and we have our setup ready. Now this time, instead of adding colors directly to the color ramp, let's add a mix color node. So search for a mix color and place it here. Now disconnect the color output from the material output and let's connect this color to the factor of the mix output. And let's connect this result to the surface output. Now what it does is, wherever the white is, it will select color B, and wherever the black is, it will select color A. So let's change the color B to something of a lighter tone and let's change the color A to somewhat of a darker tone. Next, let's select the leaf and add the same material from the drop down, select Toon Vase and let's click on this copy material or new material, so it adds a new material by copying the same setup. So now let's rename to Toon Leaf and now we can change the individual colors from here and it will not affect the colors of the original object. To give the same material to multiple objects, you can select all the objects in the scene. Let's say select all the leaves and then shift click the last leaf which is colored and then press Ctrl L and select link materials. This will give the latest material or the selected object's material to all the leaves or all the objects that are selected. Next, let's work on the petals. So just drop down, select the leaf material, click on copy to duplicate it. Let's name it to Toon Flower and let's change the colors. Now if you're not happy with the results of the light and shadows, you can always slide this slider to change the location of the shadow. So I'll just tweak it to something like this, and similarly for this part, I'll select the flower again, duplicate it and change the colors. Lastly, I'll select the stems, add the leaf material, duplicate it, rename it and change it to slightly different color from the leaves. And you can always slide this slider or marker to change the effect. So I'll select this and press Ctrl L to link materials. Similarly, I'll select this flower, shift select this flower, Ctrl L and select link materials. And lastly, I'll select this and press Ctrl L and link materials. Now everything in our scene has materials. I'm not liking the world color, so I'll just change that a little to something of a more neutral color. And then I'll adjust the waves a little. And our Toon Shader is ready. Now let's add line art using the grease pencil modifier. So since all of our objects are in single collection, we can go into the 3D viewport in this tab, press Shift A and search for a grease pencil, and this time instead of adding a blank, let's add a collection line art. Make sure you're in the collection which you want to add the line art to. So this is not the active collection right now. This is the active collection as indicated by this slightly rounded box that is on the selection. So if you click on this box or this icon, it will select this as the active collection. You can also see the active collection from here. So now collection 3 is active. So press Shift A, grease pencil and collection line art, and it will add the line art to everything. Now you can always go into the modifier panel and adjust the line art thickness from here. But one shortcoming of this method is you cannot adjust the line art for all the materials using only one modifier. If you want to add different thickness line art to different objects, you just need to add another line art modifier from here and select that specific object. Or what you can do is keep all the objects that have the same thickness of the line art in a single collection. So let's say you can add the flowers to one collection and the vase to a separate collection, and then you can add a different line art modifier for both different collections. Next, let's add some details to the leaves. So for now, I'll just click on this line art and hide it so that it's easier to work in this space. Now press Shift A and this time add a grease pencil stroke, and it will add a stroke to the scene. Next, what you can do is press Tab to go into edit mode while the stroke is selected, and press X and delete, and it will delete everything. Next, let's switch from the edit mode to the draw mode, and now you will see you have all these drawing options below. So I'll just select one of these. Let's select this ink pen rough, or let's select the ink pen, and then we can draw using the mouse, but it draws weirdly because we have not selected where to draw. So in the drop down, select this, change this origin to surface, so it will draw on the surface. Next, you can click on this drop down to change the color, but let's keep it black, and you can change the radius of the stroke from here. If you have a pen tablet, you can select this option and it will enable the pen pressure option. Similarly, you can apply this for the strength as well. Now let's just zoom in and try to draw on this leaf. So you'll see that the stroke is being drawn onto the leaf, but it's still too thick. So let's reduce the size more. And let's try again. Now it's still too thick, but we cannot go a lot lower from here. So what we'll actually do is go into the data properties of this grease pencil stroke. In the lines section, you can select adjustments, and in the stroke thickness, you can reduce the thickness from here. So this is the first common issue that will occur, that is the stroke thickness. So here's how you adjust the thickness when you can't go any lower from here. So let's use the erase tool to erase everything, and let's draw again from start. So let's select the ink brush again and let's draw some details on the leaf. Now you'll notice that the flower was in front, so the stroke jumped from here to here. So this is another issue that you'll be facing, but to fix this is simple. You just need to select the objects that you want to draw on and go in the local view, or hide other objects. So I'll just go into object mode and I'll select all the leaves that I want to draw on. So let's just say I want to draw on these 3 leaves, and also select the grease pencil object. So everything is selected. You will see that 1 to 3 plane and a stroke is selected, and I'll press / key to go into the local view mode. Now I'll again select the stroke material and I can draw in the draw mode. So you can always use the eraser and erase your lines and start from scratch. So I'm just going to fast forward this process of drawing. So let's say that's the only thing we want to color in this scene, and then I'll go into the material settings and change the base color to a dark green material. You can change it to anything that you want from here, but in our case we want a dark green material. And let's adjust the thickness again. So something like this looks good. Next, I'll turn on the line art layer again. Now our object is done and we can render it out. The second issue you can face while doing something like this is, if your objects are too small, let's say something like this, you will start to notice that first of all the line art gets very thick and you cannot adjust it below 1, so it can be still too thick. And second thing is, the shadows start getting jagged. So I think it's how the shadows work. It cannot work really well on really low resolution like this. So as zoomed in and as small the object is, the shadow resolution starts to drop. So in this case you have 2 options. You can go into the sun lamp and you can disable the shadow, but it will also disable the shadow for some of the objects. Let's say the flowers are not casting any more shadows, but this is a style choice, so you can pick if you want to keep it or not. But let's say you want to keep these shadows, in that case you will have to scale the objects a lot bigger. So in this case the object scale is big, very big, so the shadows are working fine. But still in this case also, if you want to turn off the shadows, you just need to select your sun lamp and turn off shadows. This also looks really well. So if you render this out as is, you'll notice that the line art shows in front of the flowers. So let's see how we can fix that. So in the view layer properties, click on Z and let's render again. So render image, and now our issue is fixed. This gives Z layer height to different grease pencil objects. So this one is behind these objects, so it will not show in front. Also make sure that you do not accidentally click this grease pencil and go into the object properties, visibility and in front. If you do that, it will also show in front of these other objects. So if you render again, it will show up in front. So this is how you fix that. Turn off in front if you have accidentally enabled it, and enable Z pass in the view layer. So I forgot 2 important things in the video which I am editing in later as this short clip. Let's say you have an animation in the scene and when you play it, your grease pencil objects disappear. Like these lines are visible now, but these are not visible at all the times. So what you need to do is pause the animation when it's visible, click and select your grease pencil objects, drag your timeline up and select all the keyframes for this grease pencil, press G and move them to the first frame. So now it won't disappear. If you have it like this, let's say on the 9th frame, it will disappear before the 9th frame. So just make sure your keyframes are at step 1. And the second important point is, let's say you select this line art modifier and you go into the properties and try to change the stroke thickness, it won't work. So this only works for the strokes that are drawn in the draw mode, like this leaf details. So we made them in draw mode using the grease pencil, and we can change the stroke thickness from here, but we cannot change it for the line art modifier strokes. But if you want to change them, what you can do is add a deform and a thickness modifier, and now in the thickness modifier you can increase or decrease the stroke thickness. But keep in mind that the lowest of this value will also go to the lowest of this. So let's say if you keep the line thickness to 1, it's almost similar as reducing the line thickness with this. So no matter what you do, it won't go below the line thickness of this one. But in case, let's say you want to keep it between 2 and 1, you cannot do it from here. Let's say I enter 1.5, it won't be possible here. So what you can do in this case is select a line thickness of 2 and reduce the factor to, let's say, 0.6, and it will be still thicker than the line thickness of 1. So 0.5 thickness of this 2 means its thickness is 1. So anything between 0.5 and 1 here is between the thickness of 1 to 2 here. Hope that makes sense. So let's say I keep it 0.75. It's actually between 1 and 2 line thickness right now. Let's get back to the video. Lastly, let's see how we can get that soft anime glow for the Toon Shader objects. So let's go into the Compositing tab, and if you don't see an image, just take out a render using render image and it will show up. But if you still do not see it, just add a Shift A and a viewer node. So select this viewer node and connect the image to the image, and now the output or render will be visible. Press N to hide this tab, and let's move this tab out of the way. And now if you try to move the image, you cannot move it by pressing and holding your middle mouse button and dragging. So what you need to do is you need to press Alt and then click your middle mouse button and drag the image. Also, to zoom in and out of this, you cannot use the scroll wheel. You need to press V to zoom out and Alt V to zoom in. And let's see some nodes. So I'll add a glare node, connect it to this, and make sure to connect the image to the viewer as well so we can see the changes right here. Next, let's change the type to bloom, change the highlight threshold, reduce it, and it will increase the effect. Let's keep it to something like 0.4, and then we can adjust the strength from here. If you want to see the area affected by the glare, you can just connect the glare to the viewer tab and it will show you the area affected by the threshold. So as you keep on increasing the threshold, you will see that nothing is there. So if you reduce the threshold, you will see that this area is being affected by the glare. Similarly, you can see the highlights from here as well. So connect the image to get the proper results. So let's reduce the threshold. Also, let's connect the glare back again, and you'll see this smoothness gives the transition between the selected threshold and the darker areas. So if we keep it to 0, only this much is selected and the strength is adjusted from here. But if you smooth it out, you'll see that the background area or the dark area also starts to lighten up. So you can use a mix of threshold and smoothness and strength to get your desired image glow. So let's add another node, that is the filter node, and it's by default selected at soften. So click and drag this between the glare node and the image node, so it softens up the image very lightly. So you'll see that here we are getting very crisp edges of the line art, and as we increase the effect, we get a soft effect or a slightly blurry effect. By using these two in combination, you can get the perfect Toon shaded look. So that was it for this tutorial, but if you're interested in more tutorials, you can look at it on the left, or if you're watching it after a week of release, you can check this another 2D shading tutorial where I go in depth over some glass and advanced Toon shading materials. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.